So, welcome to our workshop on climate leadership at work. Yeah, we wanted to really set the scene for today's workshop by starting with a grounding exercise. So, I'll be reading a short poem called The Question by Theo Dorgan. When the great ships come back, and come they will, when they stand in the sky all over the world, candescent suns by day, radiant cathedrals in the night, how shall we answer the question, what have you done with what was given you? What have you done with the blue, beautiful world? So I bolded the words with what was given you because I think it speaks to a really big theme that we'll be talking about today, which is how can you best leverage your unique skills and abilities, opportunities, and resources to drive climate action. That could be the creativity to inspire others or the technical know-how to, create climate solutions. But yeah, climate leadership is really about using what we have now rather than waiting for the perfect opportunity to protect our blue, beautiful world, which unfortunately we all know is very much under threat right now. So moving on to a few housekeeping/principles. Yeah, just to start with, no one really knows at all how we can make this transition to a carbon-free economy in the time that we have available. It's never been done before, and obviously there's a huge amount of work to be done. So we really need to figure it out together and learn from one another. And we can't do that effectively unless we get to know each other a little bit. So this session is going to be more interactive than some of the others. We'll be using the breakout rooms, for example, to give you an opportunity to chat with the other climate concerned employees in this session today. Given the interactive nature of the session, we'll be following the Chatham House rule to maintain confidentiality and privacy. So this means you're more than welcome to share information from the session with others in your room, but please ensure you don't, share who said it or the company that they work for. We really want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable to discuss the sensitive topics today openly and freely. As I said at the start, it would be really great if you could keep your videos on if you're comfortable. This will just help us build that sense of openness and togetherness. And we also invite you to take yourself off mute when you want to share something with the group. But if you're more comfortable sharing something in the chat, please do that as well. Finally, as facilitators, we'll be striving to make this session feel really supportive and kind, inclusive as possible. And we invite you to adhere to these principles as much as you can. So before we kick off, we really wanted to set the scene for this session. You might have heard this line. It's spoken quite a lot in the climate community. At Work for Climate, we really couldn't agree more with the sentiment. Every job should be a climate job, but unfortunately, it's not at the moment. We need to change the paradigm of who gets to work on climate and sustainability. We need everyone in every single role thinking about what it will take for their corporation to do their bit for the climate. And a big message that we want to leave you with today is that anyone can be a climate leader. Real leadership has nothing to do with hierarchy or title. And similarly, climate leadership isn't just for those with sustainability in their job titles. So whether you're a junior employee or a senior executive, anyone can step up and be a climate leader. All it requires is choosing to act and using the resources, the relationships, the knowledge that you already have to influence your organization to prioritize sustainability and resource it accordingly. This can mean staying where you are and influencing from within, which, to be honest, can actually be more powerful than quitting. And yeah, that's really because in a world where there's lots of sustainability roles going, a small number of people competing for them, the potential for impact that's additional or that wouldn't have happened otherwise through stepping up as a climate leader in your current job is really, really massive. So we're now going to paint that picture for you in terms of what it means practically to make your job a climate job and step up in that role as a climate leader. Now to the fun part that everyone loves, which is an icebreaker. So to help you reconnect with why you've joined this workshop and to help us start to get to know who's in the room today, we're going to do a quick chat-based activity. So please take a minute to share in the chat your response to these questions. So the first one is, what organization do you work for, or sector if you'd prefer not to share your organization? What thoughts or emotions come up for you when you think about making your job a climate job? And thirdly, why are you here today? And just, yeah, acknowledging that we have people joining us from government, not-for-profits, as well as corporate sectors. And at Work for Climate, we're focused on supporting employees from the corporate sector. So the content we share today was really designed with these employees in mind. But that said, the majority of it is really relevant to employees across sectors. So I would love to hear your thoughts, particularly what comes up for you when you think about making your job a climate job, if anything.
Looks like we've got
Yeah.
Richard M.
Thanks a lot for the intro. I want to introduce myself as well a bit. I'm Richie. I'm from Germany, and last year we founded like Green Professionals. It's a platform, or let's say an agency for skilled electricians from non-EU countries. We want to bring them to Germany to and foster like the climate change, or the, let's say, the whole infrastructure. And originally I'm a learned and trained electrician like 20 years ago, but during the past years I've done a couple of finance and operations stuff for NGOs, and even as a climate activist I was on the way on the streets in Berlin. And I'm super curious to meet all of you and get some input as well. And yeah, happy to see what you're doing. Thanks a lot for the meeting.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate that. And sounds like you're doing some really terrific work. So thank you for sharing. In the interest of time, we might carry on, but feel free to keep dropping in the chat the answers to some of these questions. So in terms of the agenda for today, we wanted to start with a quick presentation on why and how to make your job your most powerful source of climate impact. There's obviously a lot going on in the world at the moment, not the least with the US elections this week, but climate change is like the undercurrent making all of these other crises, unprecedented biodiversity loss, inequality, you name it, just a lot worse. So we really need to rally the troops. That's you guys to work on this as quickly and as effectively as we can. We're then going to do a couple of exercises. The first of which is to analyze the landscape of your organization and what's going on there in terms of current climate commitments, if any. We'll then help you to identify your role as a climate leader based on your existing skills, knowledge, and role, as a bunch of different ways that climate leadership can show up. And then finally, we'll help you translate this into an action plan to then move forward with in the real world. Let's have a quick look at some of the comments here. We've got one, I work in the hunger relief sector from Esmeda, where climate change directly impacts food security and our work to support vulnerable communities. Connecting climate resilience to hunger relief feels urgent and vital. Couldn't agree more. Sustainable practices in food preservation and distribution could make a real difference through the scale of the challenge, though the scale of the challenge is daunting. Still, I'm driven to help our organization adopt climate-focused approaches to better support those we serve. I'm here to explore practical ways to bridge hunger relief and climate action, learn from others, and find strategies to build more resilient food systems. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Esmeda. Yeah, I think hunger, climate, food security, it's so intrinsically linked. And yeah, sounds like you're doing some amazing work. So thank you for coming today. We've also got one from Yuval. Hello, I'm from Israel. I come from the pharmaceutical sector, currently in between jobs. I'm not sure how to continue my career, considering I would like to do more regarding climate change and can't really find jobs in my country that are climate jobs. Yeah, that's I think probably a challenge a lot of people face with finding climate jobs. There's not that many of them going. And I think events like this Climate Week this week are really great for sort of giving you some of the tools and strategies to either go out and find them or create them, or, as per the workshop we're doing today, yeah, really look at how you can turn your current job, if you're employed, into a climate job. Great. Well, perhaps we will move on, and just a quick little bit about us, the Work for Climate team. So as you probably guessed, I'm Caitlin. I'm the head of experience at Work for Climate. I'm originally from Perth, Australia, which is the traditional land of the Whadjuk Noongar people. However, I'm now based in the very not sunny today or any day city of London. I've worked in the corporate sustainability space for the past few years as both a management consultant and the co-founder of a sustainability software startup. So I've experienced firsthand what it takes to drive that, large scale sustainability change in an organization and build business cases to influence company leaders. My personal climate journey was sparked when I started an apparel business back in 2017, which I was trying to make more sustainable. The more I learned, the more worried I became, but also the more I realized that our decisions as citizens, as employees, as business leaders and owners are really crucial for driving that broader systems change that we really need to address crises like the climate emergency. So I decided at that point to do everything that I could personally and professionally to be part of those solutions with a real focus on the role of business. You can.
Thanks, Caitlin. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here with you all and great to see, we're already getting some comments in the feed that tells me that most of you are in the right place, which is awesome. So I'm head of learning at Work for Climate, and I'm joining you today from very sunny Melbourne. It's not always sunny, but it is very much today, so I'm grateful for that. I spent my first year, or the first half of my career in the corporate sector, where I worked as an impact management consultant, helping not-for-profits and government departments develop more impactful environmental initiatives. And over time, I got a bit frustrated because I felt like I was constantly one step removed from where the real action was happening on the ground. So I went away and started a social enterprise, which is all about reducing social isolation through community events. And through hosting those events, I fell into facilitation and fell in love with the craft and the power that it has to really drive transformational group experiences. So this then pushed me back into the corporate sector and into designing and delivering online learning and trying to do it in a different way that made really engaging experiences for people. As the climate crisis deepened over time, I felt more drawn to use what I'd learnt about online learning and facilitation back in the climate movement to drive more meaningful corporate action, which eventually led me to Work for Climate. So that's a long and short of me. I'll pass back to you, Caitlin.
Amazing. And now we'll just do a quick little spiel about Work for Climate in case some of you are wondering what this is. We started in Australia, but we're actually in the process of coming over to Europe and the UK at the moment. So just, a quick overview about what we're doing and why we exist. So our mission is to transform institutions. And the reason for this is because business as usual is failing us. And corporate greed and greenwash are really just costing our last chance of a livable planet. We all know that emissions are going up each year instead of down. It doesn't matter how many climate tech solutions we can accelerate. If we don't apply the brake inside those corporations to slow emissions growth, we'll literally just drive humanity straight off the cliff edge. So we need corporations to start making decisions for the climate. But corporations don't make those decisions, people do. People create companies, people run companies, and it's people that can change companies. So Work for Climate was created as a way to influence those decisions that are getting made inside companies when it comes to climate and really apply that brake to the inside of the largest corporations on the planet. We do that by working with people like you to build a movement of climate leaders inside organizations, all working to transform the system from within. So there's three core pillars to our program. The first is content, and that consists of our free digital learning content that's designed to influence you to introduce you to the technical and leadership curriculum that we teach, but also enable you to start from where you are with the tools and the resources available to you. So this is mainly delivered through our social channels, our weekly newsletter, and workshops like these. We then have courses, the courses pillar. So our flagship course, the Work for Climate Academy, is a facilitated cohort-based course open to employees of larger organizations with content that combines technical knowledge like emissions measurement with leadership and influence training. So the workshop today is a small taster of some of the content in our academy, which is designed to help you step up and supercharge your efforts as a climate leader. And then we have the community pillar, and that's for our current and previous Academy members with ongoing access to our course materials, events, and a closed peer-to-peer network. Because we all know that this work can be challenging and lonely, and it's emergent. So it's really just a space to exchange knowledge and enable the cross-pollination of insights and ideas. And just something I wanted to highlight is that all three of these pillars are really designed to help you take tangible and practical action that moves the needle as much as possible in the right ways. So a quick just overview on the role of business that we see, and would love to get your thoughts on this as well. So we're going to assume that everyone in this workshop agrees that, climate change is a serious problem that's caused by humans and that we can fix it. So in this session, we're going to focus on the role of businesses in helping us meet those global emissions targets. So at Work for Climate, we see that there's three main roles that companies can play in this transition. But before we share them, would love to know what you guys think these roles might be. Yeah, whatever you might think, a company or a business or an organization, how can they play a role in the transition positively or negatively? So drop your ideas in the chat. And just a quick note to say that we know some of you might not work for a large corporation or even a business. You may be in education or in government or in an NGO. So we invite you to consider, I guess, how this question or through the lens of how your work intersects with businesses and the key roles of business in this great transition. So if there's anyone has any thoughts on what are the three main roles that companies can play in this transition, would love to hear from you. Clara, first mover / inspiration for others. Love that. I think that's definitely one of the key ones that we see. Showing the way, being leading from the front, absolutely important. Okay, we might stop with the suspense and show you what we feel the three roles are. Of course, there's lots of different ways of framing this, but the first one that we see is, reducing climate pollution across their own operations and their entire value chain. So, that's the first one. The second one is shaping government policy and creating that public and political context for change to take place. And the third is building the low carbon products and services that the world needs. And just a quick note on the last one that, this implies finding ways to transition the products and services that the economy doesn't need. And that's definitely not what we mean here. We mean innovating new ways of thinking and doing to stay within that limited carbon budget that we have left, and to help businesses and communities adapt to the change that's already locked in. So those pink dog Crocs that you were just advertised on Instagram, no, you don't need them, and no, your dog does not need them, and no, the world definitely does not need them. So I think Clara, definitely your point on the, first mover inspiration, that very much aligns with, kind of building the low carbon products and services. And we've got one from Alexandra saying to change their process of production and services, which again sort of speaks to that last one as well as the first, and reducing the pollution across operations and across their entire value chain. Just a quick note as well that most companies today focus on number one, which is reducing that, emissions in their own house, so to speak. They tend to neglect the value chain part, supply chains, customer emissions, because that's a lot harder. Not to say it's less important. In fact, it's probably more important. So just to highlight that. Great point there from Cyrus, that communicating their sustainability challenge transparently instead of greenwashing with lighthouse projects and unrealistic goals. I think absolutely there's a huge comms challenge taking place at the moment with greenwashing as well as green hushing, which is, not communicating anything because they're too scared that there'll be a backlash. And I think that's really damaging as well, because when we don't talk about or make something visible, then we don't act on it. So I think that's a really good one to raise around how we communicate this. Now, just moving on quickly to the role of employees, because this is really critical to understand as well. that, employees like you guys are a key stakeholder group in the success of every company. And without them or you, companies are unable to offer anything to their customers or to their investors. And traditionally, businesses have been really driven by shareholder value, prioritizing profit above all else. But over the past few decades, we've seen a real shift around, companies now needing a license to operate that aligns with their stated purpose and their values. Most of this change historically has come from external pressures like media scrutiny, government regulations, and NGO campaigns. But now the dynamic is quite different. Employees are no longer, just advocating for better working conditions. They're standing up for the planet, and leaders are actually noticing. So there was a recent study that showed that 80% of C-suite leaders report that employee activism is a really significant driver of corporate action on sustainability, and that employees have already impacted their sustainability plans or soon will. It's also becoming a big part of how companies attract and retain employees. So more than ever, employees are demanding that their employers' values align with their own. It used to be that, you turned up to work and had to leave your real self at the door, but now employees are, encouraged to bring their whole selves to work. So we feel that it's really time to tap into this widespread desire from employees to see their companies step up and do more on climate, and to use that collective power to then drive action in the areas that it's needed the most, which is a good segue into the Work for Climate blueprint. And again, this is sort of a very much a high level overview of the most critical ways that, oh, sorry, Cam, any chance you could change the slide over? Brilliant. Yeah, it's a blueprint of the most critical ways that companies can have a positive impact on climate. And we teach it to employees to help you analyze where you can have the fastest and the biggest impact, as well as help you to assess how well your company is actually doing on climate, regardless of what their current claims or targets might suggest. So there are 5 focus areas which sit within 2 broader buckets. One is energy and the other is influence. So these are the 2 key ways that corporations, have the power to change that trajectory on climate change. And within each broad bucket, there is a critical shift or a focus area that directs you to the actual changes that need to happen inside your company. So the first bucket is the energy they use in the production, the delivery, and the use of their products and services, all of which result in emissions going either up or down. So in our courses, we break this into 2 technical areas that we deep dive into. The first is switching to 100% renewable energy, and the second is science-aligned net zero and interim targets. And then on the other side, we have the influence bucket, which addresses the emissions your corporation creates or hopefully produces through its broader actions. So the first is money and financed emissions. So where your company's corporate cash sits. The second is lobbying and advocacy. So that's all about, using your company's voice and influence to advocate for positive solutions instead of lobbying to maintain the status quo, which unfortunately a lot of companies currently do. And then we've got Scope X, which speaks to the emissions that are enabled by your company's activity through the clients that it represents or acts on behalf of. For example, an advertising agency working with fossil fuel firms to help them sell more of their product more profitably is an example of Scope X.
All right. So at this point, we'd now like to introduce you to a new term, or probably likely a new term that you've not encountered before, the climate entrepreneur. And a climate entrepreneur is someone who takes the initiative to work within their organization to align it with global climate goals. And what do we mean by global climate goals? Well, in this case, we mean the Paris Agreement, which aims to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, and ideally 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. Now, some of you might be thinking, surely that's the responsibility of the sustainability team, right? But actually, there are many ways to act and influence for climate in an organization, both from within and outside the sustainability team. So really, every employee has the potential to be a climate leader and entrepreneur. So there are 5 different climate entrepreneur archetypes that we want to walk you through. The first one is the practitioner, and this is the one that lots of people kind of initially think of when they think of climate entrepreneurship. This is someone who directly implements changes in their workplace. And these are often, but not always, tied to the job that they hold. But as I mentioned before, you don't have to be in a sustainability role to work for climate, nor to be a practitioner. In fact, we need people in core business roles to be applying climate to their day-to-day work. For example, you could be a finance manager or benefits manager working to switch the default workplace pension in your company to a fossil fuel option, or you could be a government affairs person who's advocating on your company's behalf for more climate-friendly policy. There's lots of different ways you can advocate for change from within your existing role. The influencer is the second option, and these are people that tend to hold power, structural power in the organization, and then they wield that structural power to influence those who hold power. This can be informally through conversations that you have with senior and executive leadership, or it could be more formally through mechanisms like sharing the results of an employee survey or concerns about insufficient climate action, or writing an open letter to your board and executives. The third way you can make change is by being a protector. And this is someone with structural power who might control budgets or lead teams or strategies. And they can create permission or protection for other climate entrepreneurs to try new things and make changes. This might look like dedicating budget or time to making changes, or allowing people to work on things side of desk, or hosting climate-related training. The fourth archetype is the navigator. And this is someone who helps other climate entrepreneurs to find their way through the journey. They're often really well networked, highly trusted people in the company. Or they're people who have created change before and know how to do it, and so are happy to support others to do the same. What their role is to help climate entrepreneurs navigate internal channels and company politics. And they also help other climate entrepreneurs figure out their way forward through coaching or sharing advice. Lastly, they might make introductions to the right people at the right time, often those in power, both inside and outside the organization. And finally, we have the organizer. So these are people who build networks of colleagues that become allies and then mobilize these allies to take direct action inside the company. A really important note to make here is that one person can hold multiple roles at a time, or you might move through different roles over time. So for instance, you might just be a practitioner, or you might be a practitioner who's also really well placed to influence decision makers. You're not just boxed into one archetype. So we're now going to walk through a few real world examples of climate entrepreneurs just to hopefully ground it in reality for you. The first one that comes to mind is Bernie, and this is his smiling face up here in the top right corner. Bernie is from Who Gives a Crap, which is an Aussie startup that's now, I think, gone global. So I think many of you in Europe will probably be familiar with their toilet paper. That's him holding a bunch of them there. When he started doing our academy course, Bernie was working in logistics at Who Gives a Crap. He had really minimal sustainability knowledge, but through doing the academy, he gained a lot of new knowledge and a whole lot of determination, and transitioned quite quickly to a full-time role in sustainability, where he was responsible for stewarding a project to switch his company to 100% renewable energy. And he started with rooftop solar. And if you get a chance after the session, Google Who Gives a Crap and have a look at how he configured the solar panels, just to give yourself a bit of a kick. It's quite amusing. Bernie designed and delivered a project to put 190 of these solar panels on the roof of their warehouse. The second example is ex-Microsoft employee Drew Wilkinson. Drew and his colleague Holly Beale built a 10,000 strong sustainability community of Microsoft employees around the world who started demanding meaningful action. This then led to the company making huge changes and setting more ambitious climate targets, including the goal to become climate negative by 2030. The third and final example is Laura Wilson, who was working at the time at Specialized Bikes, and she's also a grad of our Work for Climate Academy. And Lara influenced the managing director of Specialized to spark conversations in the cycling industry that eventually led to fossil fuel sponsorship of sporting events being removed, which is a big win. This is a quote from Laura that we think really captures what the role of a climate entrepreneur is. She says, "What I've learned is that I can be a facilitator. I don't have to be the expert, and I don't have to do it all myself. I need a team, people in different parts of the world with different experiences of the topic." So we've just hit you with a bunch of information. You're probably reeling a little bit if a lot of this is new to you. So now we want to give you some time to make sense of what we've just shared. To help you capture your thoughts in this workshop and also beyond, we've created the Work for Climate Action Canvas, and we're going to fill this in together as we move through the session. Caitlin's going to drop the link for that canvas into the chat. And when you open the link, click on the download icon in the top right of your browser window. And once you've clicked on that, open up the downloaded file. And when you do, you should have a document open that looks like this. So this is our action canvas. And if for any reason, due to firewalls or whatever, you can't access the document, don't worry. We're going to walk you through the questions and you can use whatever document you have handy, whether it's a Google Doc or a Word doc, just to capture your thoughts so you can save them for later. All right, so to start with, we're going to return to the question that we asked you at the start of the session and give you a few minutes to jot down your responses. So the question is, what's coming up for you as you consider making your job a climate job? This could be emotions, concerns, questions, ideas. Everything that comes up is welcome and we'd love to hear about it. And also, has anything changed since the beginning of the session when you first answered the question? So take those thoughts and drop them in the bottom right corner of that canvas where you can see learnings and reflections. We'll give you 3 minutes for this activity. Great to see we've got a few people dropping things into the chat. Sarah says, a strategic topic is hard to be changed by non-decision makers and there's a lack of time for extra climate work on the side. So complexities, blockers, challenges still exist. Absolutely, 100% agree. It feels good to be in a community of like-minded people. The team topic and not being an expert was a good point. Build an alliance, communicate, get out of silos, confront the decision makers if they're still doing business as usual. Fantastic, Cyrus, 100% agree with everything you put in there. This is not easy work, and it definitely helps to have a community around you as you do it, which is why we set up the Academy, and going through that course is a great way to build that community. So you feel like there's others who get what you're going through and are there to support and provide ideas and ways around those blockers that you named. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. You go, Caitlin.
Sorry, I was just going to say, yeah, I think your first point around, these sort of strategic topics are hard to be changed by non-decision makers. And I think a really big thing that we try to help employees with in the Academy and in our programs is if you're not in a decision-making role and you don't have that sort of hard power, how can you build soft power by building alliances within your organization and, building the right tactics and strategies to then get the right people on board and influence those people that are decision makers and make it sort of hard for them to say no. So I think, yeah, it's definitely tricky when you're not in that position of power, but that doesn't mean that power is fixed. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about this work, that there's a lot of different ways that you can approach that power shifting, and there's a lot that you can do even if you're not in that formal position of power.
Thanks, Caitlin. All right, we'll move on now. Just wanted to quickly share this data viz from the 2024 Deloitte Millennial and Gen Z survey. What really stands out to us in this data is when asked about the top actions that they wanted their organizations to invest in to tackle climate change, the respondents highlighted that training, helping employees make more sustainable choices and making their offices greener were the top ranked options. However, as we've just discussed, these actions are really just the tip of the iceberg, and it really reveals that there's a pretty big gap between what people currently know and what we really need them to know in terms of what is the most impactful action they could be taking. So hopefully after this session, when you're considering how to make your job a climate job, you'll be focusing less on the stuff at the top and more on the stuff at the bottom. More impactful systemic actions, things like working to transform the core business model, or lobbying the government from your organization to get change that's more favorable to climate action across the board. These are the kinds of changes that are genuinely going to move the needle on climate and shift responsibility to where it belongs, which is the systems and decisions that shape our organizations in the world. So move on to the next activity now, I think. This one is focused on company goals, and we're going to continue to use the canvas that we just shared. And this activity is all about helping you identify what your company goals are when it comes to climate. And some of you may already know what those goals are, and you may not be very happy with them, or your company might not have any goals set at all. Or you may be in a camp where you don't have a clue what your company goals are, which is totally normal and fine. But you might want to take a few minutes now to research and see what you can find out. A lot of companies make that publicly available. This is your time to document for yourself where things are at in terms of company goals, and also where you'd like them to be in the future. Just a quick rehash of the Work for Climate blueprint that Caitlin ran you through earlier that you might want to consider in this step. Some of the questions you might like to ask yourself are listed down below. So where is my company on its climate and sustainability journey? What are the most pressing changes that need to happen? And for those of you who are already in sustainability roles, what can my department or organization be doing more of to have more impact? For those of you who are new to sustainability, you might not know the answer to these questions. And again, that's totally fine. Just write down what you think they might be, your sense from what you do know, your intuition, and we really encourage you to dream big. And just a quick reminder that we're not talking about recycling programs or bike to work initiatives or using keep cups. We're thinking about big, ambitious, systemic changes. And for now, we're not thinking about whether or not you can influence them. This is really just blue sky thinking. What do you think needs to happen at the company level? So we're going to take 5 minutes here to reflect. Jot your thoughts down in the middle of the canvas in that circle under company goals. Some really interesting things coming through in the chat as well. Yuval shared a link. I think it was Yuval, was it? Cyrus, sorry, shared a link to an activist consulting group, which seems fascinating. So check that out when you get a second. If you've never looked into your company goals, hopefully that was an enlightening experience with a bit of Googling. And yeah, make sure you've captured that somewhere where you can refer to it later. We're going to jump to a break now. I'm going to take 5 minutes, grab a drink, grab a snack, have a loo break, quick stretch, and then we'll see you back here at 8 a.m. your time. Well, 8 a.m. UK time. I don't know what time that is in the rest of Europe, but hopefully you can figure it out. There we go, 9 a.m. So yeah, see you back in 5 minutes.
Shall we carry on? Hopefully everyone's back. Great. So now we're going to move on to the next activity, which is to help you identify your role. Oh, there we are. So yeah, now that you're a little bit clearer on what needs to happen at the company level, it's time to turn your thoughts to the role that you can play in making that happen. So to help us with that, we're going to return to the archetypes that we shared earlier. So that's the practitioner, the influencer, the protector, the navigator, and the organizer. And we'll show them up on the screen so you can have a little descriptor for each as a memory jolter. So you now have 5 minutes or so to reflect on the following questions. The first is, which archetype or archetypes of climate entrepreneur am I? What role can I play? And what is mine to do? So if you could jot your thoughts down on the canvas under the My Role heading, we'll give you 5 minutes to do this, and then we'll be moving into breakout groups to share your reflections. So hopefully everyone has had some time to jot down some thoughts on the type of archetype or the, climate entrepreneur that you feel you're best suited to, the role that you want to play. Instead of breakouts, I've had a few people having to leave to go to work, so we're going to do this as a broader group discussion. But we would absolutely love to invite those still on the call to share your thoughts, what you've written down, any just broader thinking or thoughts that have come to mind as you've gone through this exercise. So please feel free to chuck it in the chat, or again, if you are brave enough to come off mute, we would love to hear your voice as well. I think something we have seen in previous workshops and academy programs is that a lot of people, particularly those in sustainability roles, feel that they want to take on the practitioner role, that this is sort of where the action happens, I guess. But what we would love to encourage is that, a lot of all of these roles are incredibly important. And, for example, the organizer and mobilizing allies in your organization to, influence leaders or, sort of put pressure on the board, that can be just as, if not more, effective as someone going and doing those actions and implementing them. Both are needed, and it's important to think about the different roles that you can take up, but also that you can empower others in your organization to see themselves stepping into. So just a quick thought on that. But again, would love to hear from anyone if this is something they've tried in the past, if there's any of these roles you've tried and found it really tricky, or has this, helped you think about it in a slightly different way, that climate leadership isn't just about like one thing. There's lots of different ways that it can show up in an organization.
Got Clara saying right now, I'm an organizer, I would say. Clara, if you're comfortable coming off mute and saying a bit more about that, we'd love to hear it, but only if that feels good for you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm right now doing a sabbatical, but in my free time, I do climate education workshops. So I would consider that in the role of an organizer, like mobilizing other people to take action in their company.
Absolutely. Yep. Spot on. Are there any other roles you think you could be stepping into that you see up there?
Yeah, for sure. I think I would like to step into the role of an influencer. I don't see myself that much in the practitioner role because I'm not that detail oriented. I'm more the big picture thinker. And to be honest, I'm not sure if I understand like the difference between the protector and the navigator.
Yeah, so I'd say the protector is someone who perhaps has more hard power in the organization. So it's someone that can, give someone a line directly to the CEO to give them a voice, or it's giving them an opportunity to speak in a board meeting. So it's sort of creating those enabling structures and that space and that visibility for other archetypes and these sort of entrepreneurs to go and do their work. Whereas the navigator, perhaps they don't have that hard power, but they're still really, really important in terms of helping navigate some of the informal channels. So maybe it's someone who just has a lot of sway in the organization. They're not like a C-suite executive, but they're someone who's looked up to a lot, or kind of has access to, they have a great network or some other resource.
Or they've played the role of a climate entrepreneur themselves. So they've been down the path. So they've got a mentorship role they can play, or coaching role.
Cool. Yeah, I actually I can see myself in more of these roles.
Great. Yeah, as we said, you can fill any and all of them at any one time. So you're not just limited to the one. We got some great comment in here from Alexandra. The archetype model is useful to realize there's more than just a practitioner. I already have done a good mix, but probably it'd be good to concentrate more on a special role and focus my energy. Yeah, right. Yeah, great. So that can be useful just to dial in on one and take it to the full extent rather than spreading yourself and trying to try lots of different strategies at the same time. Yeah, that can be a great way to go. Caitlin, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so thank you for sharing, Alexandra. I think, yeah, as Cam said, it can be useful to focus on one, and particularly if you're able to match that to your sort of what you feel are your unique skills and strengths and experiences and knowledge that you have and what feels good for you. I think it can be, I think there's often sort of this is the right way to do something sort of way of thinking often in the climate space, but I think we'd really encourage you to, yeah, kind of find your own path in the space and make it something that feels personal, maps to your identity, how you see yourself in the world, because then you're just going to be a lot more motivated to keep going and you'll have that energy, you'll have that, yeah, just sort of that drive to do it really well and then to inspire others to join you. So yeah, I think if you're going to focus on one and do it in a way that is really authentic to you and what you like to do and what you feel you're good at.
Right. So the next step is we're going to do some next steps. So we'd love to hear, have a think. We've got, how many minutes have we got here? Let's take 3 minutes to think through what might your next steps be. And again, this doesn't have to be anything big or grand, just some little steps in the direction of making the goals in the center of your canvas happen. Is there a conversation you could have with someone, a community you could join, a book that you've got sitting on your shelf that you've been meaning to read? Or maybe you might want to enroll in a course, maybe check out the academy. Think about what those next steps might be, keeping it nice, small, and actionable. So yeah, we're going to give you 3 minutes to have a think there. Okay, hopefully that was enough time to capture something. So we're now going to share a quick example of what a completed canvas looks like. And Caitlin's going to share a link in the chat where you can access that completed canvas just to give you some ideas and see what is possible. So yeah, don't feel like you need to take all of this in now. You can access the link later, and we'll also send it through in an email for those who are watching this video afterwards. So now that you've had a chance to reflect on what your next steps might be, we'd love to hear from you. How likely are you to actually implement these next steps on a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 is definitely not going to do it and 5 is definitely going to do it? And so pop the number in the chat, but don't hit enter yet because we don't want to bias or skew each other. All right, hopefully you've had time to think and drop a number in the chat. So hit enter. Let's see where people are at. Got 1 response that's come through so far. It's a positive response. It's a 4, which is great. If anyone else wants to add your thoughts in there, that'd be good. Another 4.
Just Cyrus, oh, there we go. Sorry, I was just going to say you sent that as a direct message to me. The 5, we love to see it. No, you've sent it to
Looks like a 5.5 off the scale. Nice work. So those are pretty high scores that we haven't heard from everyone, but that's okay. If anyone is more close to the kind of 3 or 2 or 1 level, this is a question for you. What prevented you from saying you were definitely going to implement your steps, and what would it take to shift you closer to a 5? What support might you need? So take a minute. We won't wait, but yeah, have a think about those questions after the session and pop them into the barriers and enablers section of your canvas. I think that's me done. I'm going to pass over to Caitlin.
Amazing. Yeah, just really in sort of closeout mode now, but really want to thank you all for joining us today. It's incredible to see folks stepping up into the hard work that is being a climate leader, leading within your organization. It's so, so important. And yeah, I really just want to thank and acknowledge you guys for joining us today. So what we have shared in the workshop is really just the tip of the iceberg. And yeah, if you want to take a deeper dive into employee climate leadership, would love to invite you to join us in our academy, where you'll get everything that you need to know to drive that real change in your organization. I'm really delighted to share that we'll be launching a new academy in Europe and the UK next year. Cam is just sharing a link in the chat right now to a page on our website where you can drop your details to stay informed on the academy launch date. And maybe Cam, just go on to the last slide because I think I got the link in there as well. But yeah, would love to see you guys in there, or if you could share it with someone you think might be interested in stepping up as a climate leader and thinking a bit differently about their role. So yeah, if yourself, your friends, your colleagues are interested, please check out the website and sign up. We'll be sharing some more details very soon. And just a note to click the Europe UK tab, not the Australian one, but I think Cam has shared the specific link, so that should be fine. Yeah, with that, we will give you all 5 minutes back of your day. Thank you so much for joining, and yeah, all the best, and hope to see you in another event or the Academy very soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming along.